I'm Mitch Gross, and I am the U.S. sales for Prolycht lighting. And Prolycht lighting, we have a variety of RGB ACL light fixtures that are designed to be full color range, fully adjustable, and have a lot of capabilities. Prolycht itself has been around in China for about 8 years, but as coming into the rest of the world's market, it's been for a couple of years now, and I've been at the company for that time.
Here you have something that's a combination with another company, and I'm wondering if you can talk us through that.
Absolutely. So we have the Chromalink App, which is our proprietary app. Everyone's got an app to control their lights, to be able to speak to their lights and do stuff. And it runs on your phone or tablet and such. And we had a function that was built into the app where it would look at the camera that was built into your phone or tablet, and it would be able, you could do like a color pick, and if it saw, you pointed at something blue and really bright, it would make your light go blue and really bright. Simple, fine. And we even did, then we were like, oh, this is interesting, let's make a video recording of that. And we made, so you can do up to 10 minutes of a video recording, 10 seconds of something yellow, and then 30 seconds of something blue, and whatever, and then you could play that back, and you could have take after take, you shoot your angles, and you'd have a little color story that would play out. And so you could always match it for your sequence every time. Great. And then we're like, well, maybe we can do a real-time one. And then just real-time, whatever the camera is seeing, it's going to control whatever lights you have connected, and so you're doing an interview, and you have natural daylight coming through the window in the background, and then you want to replicate that with the fill that you're keying your talent with. Okay, great, it's a 3-hour-long interview, and the sun's going behind the clouds or behind a building or whatever, and it's going to adjust your key light, and you literally would take your phone or your iPad, you'd point it out the window, just at the sky, and it would just play it out and it would match. Terrific, great. But the limitation was that it was locked to the camera on your iPhone or iPad, and what is the accuracy of that compared to your main camera, and how accurate are the colors going to be relative to that, and and how much control you had, and the limitations are there. And also you had to take your thing and point it there. Now there's this other company, Accsoon, and they make this converter called the See Mo or the See Mo Pro, and this is the See Mo Pro on this camera right here. This takes a SDI or HDMI video signal, and it encodes it into a data signal that then can be fed directly into hardwire into your iPhone or iPad. And now we work with them to be able to interpret that video signal so that we can read that actual live video signal. It can be a video signal of a backdrop, it can be whatever video signal you want to be sending in there. It could be from your main camera, which is what we're doing here. We're actually taking the camera feed and we're feeding it into the iPad, into Chromalink. So this is a function that we call Image Track RT for real time. We're taking this video signal and it's feeding from the camera through the See Mo into Chromalink. I'm using a local area network that I set up with, so I'm going to a Wi-Fi and going to a router that then I hooked up our lights. I have 2 lights here. I can connect up to 8 lights and control them individually or group them together if I want to. So I picked 2 different targets here. I did one that's a small target and one that's a larger target, but I could vary that as I wish. And when my background starts playing again, which it'll do in just a moment, I have my 2 different lights. I have this one right here that I'm just switching on and off so you can see it actually functioning. And of course my background has stopped playing. Oh, there it goes. Now my background is active. As these lights are changing, right, if I just move that over, it's going to change what the light is going onto my subject. So those light levels actually are changing on the subject, and you can then see it in the finished product here. The change of brightness and color of these lights, like this target right here, is pointing at flickering red lights. Mm-hmm. It's making that red light flicker. It's flickering on her. That's replicating the flicker from as if that was a source, and it makes it look like she is actually in that environment with interactive lighting. Now I can take these lights, if I want to adjust the lights, I don't just like go with whatever is there. If I double tap on this square, I can adjust the relative intensity of it.
Nice.
I can adjust the white point that I'm then applying that color onto, and I can do that for each of my individual targets. So I can, again, up to 8 different lights with 8 different targets that I could control, or I could group them together so you could have like one color source target could have a hard light and then maybe a soft fill that's working with it and stuff, and then you can make all those match and interact. 8 lights, it's a pretty powerful system for what is a free app, and this is a few $100s for this converter to be able to then get the signal in there. I'm doing it by, I can do this over Bluetooth, however Bluetooth adds latency, the nature of Bluetooth, so I like doing it with a hardwire. You're only going to 8 lights, so it's not that huge a kind of setup, and literally, I set this up yesterday in about an hour myself, slowly, comfortably doing it. You can quickly set this whole system up. This as a program is ridiculously intuitive to use. You don't have to I could sit and show you how to do this whole thing in a few minutes, and then you're off and running. You can just figure it out yourself. It's a very powerful system for doing process shots, for doing a mock location kind of thing. I had a shoot with someone where they got rained out, and they literally just went into a parking garage and they created a space, and they had a video projector for that, and they strung up a sheet because it was going to be out of focus in the background anyway. So they strung up a sheet, they did a video projector in it because they didn't have any other setup to go in the thing, and they were set up in about 40 minutes and we're shooting a sequence, and it was as if some other location. They had a background plate for it, so they just did it. So that kind of flexibility that people think they need to go into some virtual studio for that's going to cost them $20,000 a day or some huge thing, those are great, but either they're not attainable for us all, or maybe you just don't really need all that for something, for whatever. If you just a replacement for green screen, a basic green screen sort of thing, where you actually have interactive lighting that really sells the putting the subject in with its background, it's a very powerful system.
No, it's great to have this sort of poor man's version, but it's actually quite powerful.
It's a very powerful thing, and it's also something you don't need like a degree in order to do. But when you just need to do some, a certain scale of things, or you're adding this one thing to the on a shoot day, you don't want to bring in a whole giant thing for what is just a couple of shots. This is a very powerful, very flexible tool. It will work with the Orion 300FS, the Orion 675FS, as well as the Dedolight Neo Color Plus, because that light is also an engine from Prolycht, and so that they all communicate the same way.
Now let's segue a little to your projection lenses.
Yes, so perfect segue. We were talking about Dedo. We also work with Dedolight for optical accessories for our lights. And these all work with both our Orion 300 as well as our 675 FS lights. So on here right now, this is our fresnel, right? This is a 15 degree to 50 degree lens, and it's really, really nice. I really love this thing. It's a terrific setup. However, there are times where you need certain precision control that you don't have with that. So I'm just going to dim that real quick just so I don't blind myself as I switch over. Take this off. Very lightweight, by the way, too. Very, very small, very lightweight.
Slimline.
We have 2 different categories of optical accessories from Dedo, and most people lump these together. They don't, because other manufacturers, they only make one thing that kind of does both, but they do both, but less effectively for both. Dedo makes an extremely accurate version for each. So one is projector, and he has different optics for a regular projector. You can have gobos in it. You can do the 4-leaf, cutters and such. And when I put this in here, again, it just pops on. By the way, this is our Bowens mount, which is a locking clamp Bowens mount. So extremely strong, super stable. Most Bowens mount things, the optics kind of wobble around in them, and you don't want that when you're using precision optical tools, also some of which could be heavy, so you don't want to have the stress. So that just slips in, clamps in place, and that's super strong. So I'll go ahead, full brightness, and now I'm doing a projection. And that projection, I have different focal length lenses that are available for that, but you can see the contrast is excellent. It's really, your blacks are not corrupted by any of the color, any of the white light thing. You're not getting color fringing along the edges. In fact, when I take the four-way cutters and I shove them all the way closed, if there's any dirt or dust on the edge, you actually can see that. Like you wipe it off, your little air canister in there, because it's that precise that it can actually see that little hairy edge, if you will.
This projection lens, will it take both the cutters and the gobos, or do you have to have a separate one?
You choose one or the other, yep. or there's also an iris, so you can put that. But so this is a module right here that is a clamp to hold your gobos, the standard size gobos, or you could have the four-way cutter that you would put in there. This pops off and you put the four-way cutter in there instead.
Gotcha.
So you choose one or the other. So, and then one of the other things that's nifty, and there's different lenses that you would put on the front here, and you can, of course, unlike some other things, you can properly rotate that 360 any which way you want. There's no yoke mount on here. It's the light that has it, and you put that on. So this is a reversible mount on the yoke, so you could actually make it so that it's angled back. You're sliding the light back to change your center of gravity. But this is super strong, and most of the time you don't never need to think about that. But you could if you wanted to worry about the balance.
Right.
Most people, when you do a projection and you want to soften it a little, you just throw it a little out of focus.
Right.
But I find there's a sort of mechanical quality to that. It's not when you have your camera, you don't throw it out of focus when you want to soften it. You put a diffusion filter in front of it, and you just sort of soften the edges in an organic way. So Dedo was like, well, why not do that same thing? He actually makes these little filters. There's a little clamp ring that just clamps onto the front here, and then it has different grades of these acrylic filters that are a stippled surface. And so that stippling, when I put it in front here, just sort of softens it in a very natural way.
Nice. And
you can always just, like spray some hairspray or Vaseline or something, or a little nose grease, whatever you want to go and create.
Old-timey.
Look, you know what? It works. It's the reason that the people did things this way, but it actually makes a much more natural looking, soft kind of thing. If you want to have something going through a window and just, an effect, this is super precise. And this is great when you're doing like tabletop work, or you want to have just very precise cuts and doing an effect on the background, something like that. If a lot of people think of a projector like, well, I just need to get a blast of light over to like bounce into this card or something like that. You can do it with this, but it's not the tool for that. That's not what Dedo designed. This is designed to project a very precise light, and that you can shape in a certain way. This will give you, depending on which lens and the setup, at about several meters, this will give you about 10,000 lux in output. If I want to get a blast of light, and those are intensifiers. I have this one, which, think of it as a prime lens, no adjustment on it whatsoever. The only thing you can do is there's a honeycomb on the front that stops spill, which honestly I don't even ever find I need to bother with. So I just pop that off, and that gives me about a half a stop of extra light. On this light, it's about a 14-degree beam, and where that was about 10,000 lux, this is going to be about 60,000 lux. So I get a nice blast of light going, and you can see there's a little bit of unevenness to it. This is really designed to punch through or be reflected off of something. Like if you have your light stream or whatever, exactly, going into a white card cove or something to give a little thing, but it really travels. I mean, you can get that beam really getting out there. And so on this light, it's a 14-degree beam. Yeah, so you can really see that beam. I mean, this is from a 675 watt light. That's a lot of light that really travels out there. But if I really want to get some oomph, and I need some adjustability, instead of, again, thinking of cameras, instead of a prime, I want to go to a zoom. Which is, I think it's about 24, 25 centimeters across. It's a big piece of land. I'm not going to bother taking the honeycomb off it, but you see it's adjustable. It weighs a lot more too. Loosen that, and you can see the whole assembly slides in and out.
Wild.
So I'm just going to go ahead and put that on there. We're tweaking a little bit the mechanics, and so this will be shipping soon with the slightly more robust mechanics to it. But I just close that clamp. You can see that this is pretty hefty. This is like 15 pounds, but I don't need to bother switching to. I could if I want to, but I usually just don't bother with it. I believe it's a 7 to 33 degree zoom range. And I can go from that wide all the way into that tight. If the projector at a few meters was 10,000 lux, and the parallel beam adapter, which is the prime, at the same few meters was 60,000, this, at its most intense, is 100,000. 100,000 lux. Yeah. It's a lot of light that travels, and again, that beam really does carry. And again, I would use this to like punch into a card or into CLRS or that sort of thing. That's really what it's meant for, but it is a huge blast of light.
Yeah. Thanks for running us all through the different offerings. This is interesting to see the two different ways that you can spot up your light. Certainly much more precision, and in a lot of ways the Fresnel gives you most of this, except not as tight.
Your Fresnel can't get that tight, and also, by nature of a Fresnel, it's gonna have drop off. It's gonna have you're gonna have to maybe set up some flags and stuff to keep it off of things. If you need to like shoot a beam over the top of your set to hit that card to bounce back in or whatever, it's a much cleaner setup in that regard. So it's different tools for different things. But most people don't realize there can be a separation between a really efficient intensifier and a projector. If you really want to get a great projection and the sharpness of it, you want this. If you really want to get a lot of light traveling over, you want this.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Mitch. Wanted to show you how I now put 675, got a little bit of foam there, which will fit just underneath here. So put that in, sneak that in, and as I put this in, around this piece, I can put the head cable, put that in there, and then this came with that bottom mount, this extra piece here, the extended base. So get that in there. And then slip that in. And now I can go on the shelf, and I'm ready to go with the Fresnel.